So our next session focuses on the craft that you often feel before you consciously notice it, sound. From music and composition to sound design and voice, this integral layer serves to create emotional impact, immersion and realism. To explore that world, please welcome, their names are going to come up in a second, former British Arrows co-chair Claire Donald, owner and chief creative officer at Factory, Anthony Moore, sound designer Johnny Byrne, executive creative director Kim Papworth, head of music at Soundtree Music Lewis Almau, and Leland managing director Toby Williams.
Here's a little song from Honda for anyone who's ever hated in the key of grrr. Can hate be good? Can hate be great? Can hate be good? Can hate be great? Can hate be something we don't hate? Is hate so bad? If it makes us mad,
That's actually us.
we should be glad it
Us
makes us
whistling.
mad, because only then we
That's
mad.
us whistling.
Sorry, that meant let's cut it because it's 2 minutes long. I thought we'd all be sitting here
Sing along.
slightly drumming our fingers. I am so thrilled to be here today and to welcome my amazing panel to the stage. We are going to be exploring the power of audio in advertising and specifically the craft of music and sound design within the mix, excuse the pun. So you're here because you're all brilliant, but also because it gives me a lovely range of skills. I've got an esteemed director in Kim, thank you very much, a fantastic music supervisor in Toby, an award-winning composer in Luis, and two amazing sound designers in Anthony and Johnny. Anthony, with all the crazy stuff you've done with Factory, very much focused more on advertising. And Johnny, whilst obviously you've got quite a lot of that in your career, you've latterly been focusing more on long form and features. Got to do a bit of a name drop, including the sound designer on the amazing Begonia and most recently Hamlet. So thank you all so much for being here. You are all collectively and singularly responsible for so much of the work that's won awards over the last, I wouldn't say 50 years, none of you are old enough for that, but certainly 10, 20 years. And we chose a few images just to represent some of the British Arrows winners over the period of time that we're covering. I had a few rubbish ideas, obviously, about how to represent audio, should we do an audio sizzle, but we ended up just selecting some images from some of those more iconic ads. And I think it's incredibly powerful, because I'll guarantee as you look at these, you're going to hear a metal cog rolling along a surface, or you're going to hear waves crashing and drum beating, or indeed you're going to hear the rather lovely sound of Garrison Keillor encouraging us to make something better. So that speaks to the power of the craft that all these people represent today. And with that, I'm going to kick off with some questions. So, Johnny, the main topic of this was really to look at music and sound design. And I hear people often talk about music driving emotion and sound design driving narrative. Mm-hmm. And I wonder, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think I agree. And I think had you said it the other way around, I would have agreed to that as well, actually. Because I think the, music, for the most part, tends to be underscoring the emotion that you feel, and it'll be aiming to heighten that. And some directors may use it in counterpoint and think that, and to subvert the narrative. But for the most part, it is emotion. But that doesn't mean to say that sound design is apart from the emotion. Traditionally, the sound design, and which is often the diegesis of a film, the things that the characters in the scene would be able to hear themselves, that is very much a part of the narrative storytelling. But for example, if there was a scene in a kitchen and two people were having a distressful conversation, you could quite easily choose a refrigerator hum at one musical pitch and a dishwasher hum at another, and have dissonance or create a discordant note that would fully act like score and become part of the way of leaning on people a little bit harder. And for me, the way I see that through, I started very much in commercials for many years, and only went to do films because Jonathan Glazer told me I had to, because I was his sound guy, and I didn't want to at all. But we discovered what we liked about how to use sound, and it was that very much if you create a credible immersion and you figure out how to use natural sound, but use it conspicuously like music, and in many ways real documentary but cinematic, then you're going to give people a much deeper reaction because they are fully immersed in the scene, as opposed to music which can be telling you what to think, kind of thing. But that I sound a bit like I'm a sound designer, so I'm selling you the sound design story. But yeah, they are both incredibly powerful.
So it'll take us up. We're gonna. This will be like a conversation, but I think until you all get warmed up, I'm going to continue to point questions in your direction. So Kim, yes. We spoke beforehand, and I was interested that you've said you felt that the audio was actually more important to the success of a piece than the imagery.
Which is quite controversial.
Can you talk to that, please?
A very shorthand way of thinking about it, I guess, was in movies, if you watched like a very short bit of, say, Jaws, or a very short bit of dramatic, say, E.T. even, or even the shower scene in Psycho, and you turn the sound down, it really does bring it home how powerful sonically the relation between what you're seeing and what you're hearing works. So you could argue that then if you turn the sound back up and stop looking at the screen, would that be a good way of going, well, actually, that sound is doing a lot more heavy lifting than actually what I'm seeing. So I think it is a debate to be had. And the next thing was, we're lucky enough to be asked to make these incredibly powerful short bits of film. And then when they're made, they get placed next to lots of other short, powerful bits of film. So you're under an enormous amount of pressure to get people's attention to either, because normally you have great stories to tell. So the sound design and the music are so important within that. And I think, there's, in marketing, there is quite a lot of expectation and pressure around what things look like. And as a result, and also if you're doing it, you're in a campaign, quite often you get given very strict guidelines about what things should look like and things like that. And in some ways, sound has always been a little bit left to its own. So I think we always just felt, what a brilliant opportunity. If we really want to get people's attention, going in and doing sound with these two over the years was always amazing. And we always used to have a really strong conversations before we even started. And in some cases, really early on, before we even went and did a shoot, we'd come and talk to you and you go, well, maybe we need to go and record this and then and stuff like that. So I think I've always said that because I think, the world of marketing, it can be so visually rich and it can be so easy to think that that's the important thing. And I love sound, so I'm biased, but I'm inclined to always say that just to be provocative. So.
Can I add an interesting fact that when you look at an image, you process it, and it takes about 100 milliseconds for it to go in your eye and go through your prefrontal cortex, and then you have a thought about it. Whereas with sound, it's about 10 milliseconds. It goes straight into your ear, and it goes into your limbic system, and you react to it before you think about it. And so for that, it tends to be the truth of what if you're looking at something and hearing at the same time, you believe the sound more.
I was always convinced that if you had two bits of film and one was of a model train but with real sound on it.
Yeah.
And the other was a bit of
A real train.
with
a
me
model.
going chuff, 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 chuff on it. That most people would go, well, I like that one feels more real to me than that one. You know?
It's true. And you don't. And if the picture cuts out, it's not half as annoying as if the sound does.
Yeah. That's a very good one.
We should,
Anyway, sorry.
we should have had
digress.
the cinematographers on the stage as well. It would end up with a big fight, wouldn't it? I think?
Those guys.
Anyway, we don't want that kind of
see 'em round
creative
the
tension.
They were the warm-up act.
Sorry, Louise.
I wonder also, in this fight for our attention with all this great work coming at us, whether sound is more important than ever, because we've got this two-screen situation where people have got the telly on, but they're also looking at their phones. So actually, we've thought about that a
That's
lot
a good
recently.
point.
Of like, how can we disrupt that kind of constant stream of stuff with something that sounds different and that kind of makes you snap out of this other stuff that's fighting for your attention, maybe.
It's interesting as well because we are in an age where I feel people really respect what Sound of Music can do more because we're all consuming it on headphones. We're on the train listening to stuff, and I think we've all been attuned to what good sound is, and you expect it to be a certain level, and that probably kind of comes from, you know, popular music, the Beatles, and, you know, production through the years. People just want it to sound at a certain level. And I think that's really good for people like us because that's where the craft comes through. And you remember, like someone that just backstage to me said, where's all the jingles gone? And there is a little bit of that. It's like, I remember mad sounds and jingles and stuff from my youth, and I probably don't remember the images, sorry everyone, but that's just how my brain sort of works. But it can be so evocative. And I think that's what's brilliant about it.
Yeah. 100%. Right, I'm going to mix up the order of the questions a little bit, just to move around the panel. So, Toby, for you, how much responsibility do you think, as audio makers, we have for shaping culture rather than reflecting it?
It's a big question. I do think that we've got responsibility, but I think it's true to say that there's a variety, right? So every job comes with a certain like configuration of objectives, I guess, whether they're cultural or commercial or creative or artistic. I think that, you know, as creators, I guess, you know, audio creators, but otherwise other production disciplines, there is a responsibility in the decisions that we're making, right? Because by virtue of the fact that you're making certain creative decisions, you're not making others. And so I guess you kind of, it leads you to think about whether certain stories or perspectives are being underlined or ignored or, you know, anything else. So I think in the wider context of being a creator, there is responsibility there. Whether or not it's a responsibility to shape or reflect culture, I'm not sure. I think both can be equally compelling and important. I think thinking specifically about music, which I will do, it's a kind of, maybe it's slightly crude, but like if you're thinking about a musical category, right? So it could be anything like British hip hop from the last like 10, 20 years and how important a sound that's been with incredible cultural depth and commercial success and international reach. And I guess it can lead you to ask, like, what is the responsible way of engaging with that category? And you could say that the responsibility is to reflect it, right? And to document it in an authentic, sincere way. Or you could say that the responsibility is to contribute to it, kind of pushing it forward artistically or commercially. Or you could just think about it as like like any cultural artifact that you can play with, you know, and like treat it with a sense of humor or with irony or kind of muck around with it. So what am I getting at? I think both are important. I think both can lead to like really interesting creative ideas, you know, whether you're aiming to shape or just reflect culture in a broader sense.
Okay, thank you. So, Anthony, I've given you a slightly, well, let's see. I was going to say a slightly punchy question, but possibly not. I was just thinking about, obviously, some of you are more expert in sound design and some of you are more focused on music, and then obviously the likes of Kim, very much both. Do you ever see any creative tension between those who are responsible for music and the sound design when you're in the mix?
The tension of being told to turn all your sound effects down after 2 weeks of working there. That's fine. That's what we do. No, do you know what? I think the whole...
I've never heard a composer come to a mix and say, turn my music down.
No, not that.
Usually the opposite.
But I think, like, I always approach work with... we used to do it a lot with Kim. We'd fill everything up, and it's to have all the tools at your disposal on the board is what we'd kind of say, and that would be music, that would be dialogue, that would be sound effects, that would be Foley, whatever. And then it's a case of, you know, we're there to serve the story, we're there to tell the story, and you can enhance the story through all of those things at our disposal. So I always see music as just one of the tools that I need to work with, and I think we've been very lucky, and we do, you know, lots of work with these guys as well, where you know, we will always work with the composer's vision, but there's a great space where you can actually work with stems and kind of really craft the music to kind of duck and dive with the sound design. So one thing's not leading, they can push and pull, you can create different sort of narrative feelings as you go through, and I think that's a really beautiful space to work in, because I love the fact that we can, you know, it's not just put the music and the voice, it's like that's so flat and so dull. I think you have all these tools to play with, so just go deep on it and enjoy it. And that's where, like, lots of my more favourite jobs have come from, where you're just playing in a way. I mean, that's a great way to earn a living. But you know, I think craft and what we're all here today to talk about is giving ourselves that space to be able to play and figure out what's wrong, to figure out what's really right. I think, you know, that's really important. And maybe these days that gets shrunk a little bit, and I think, you know, today is a day about celebrating what we do and kind of fighting for that sort of time, and, you know, the trust of the directors and the creatives and the people that we work with. They come to us to give us the space to play and create and craft. And yeah, for me, there's never tension between sound design and music, because I look at it as it's all one. It's a soundscape, and that soundscape, it has to tell you the story in the best possible way.
There is a sweet spot in there where music can become sound design, and sound design can become you know, and
yeah.
It's good when both of those two camps try and
yeah,
claim the middle ground, because
yeah.
it leads to...
And that normally comes when you have got a really good story to tell,
Yeah.
and you're so determined to get across the emotion or the excitement or whatever's going on in there, and the power of the music and the sound design is just such a beautiful thing to play with around what you're seeing, and
Yeah.
just, you know, making some things sit and some things not, and just like it's a real sweet spot, isn't it, that bit?
I think tension could come, and it probably, you guys could elaborate on this. It's like that idea of we haven't found the track, let's keep going, and there's a beautiful space to be that does happen, where everyone starts work with a track and you work around that. There's a few things on here, but you can see that everything's been planned, everything's been thought about from a musical perspective on the shoot, and there is a joy in that, rather than 2 days before play out going, we still haven't found the right track, so let's keep listening to all the music in the world. And it's like, oh, but I think we actually had it in the offline, and maybe we did. But that's a process, and that's part of the tension. It's part of people just trying to find what's right. But you guys could probably elaborate on that.
Yeah. I mean, you could call it a tension, but I think you can also think about it as just an interplay with those two worlds, right? And definitely that, you know, when we're crafting music, a big sort of landmark moment in the process is when we get to sound design, and the depth that it gives the music that we've created, you know, like the world building that it gives around it. I think that it's always a really sort of like important moment for a client to hear the two things kind of being balanced together. And so I wouldn't always say turn the sound design down, and sometimes.
One of the big differences or ways of explaining it, I think, you know, my mother, God rest her, she knows what music is, she knew what music is, but she also used to say to me, what do you mean you do the sound on films? They sound all right to me. And so she had literally no idea what you could do with it, but it's more than that.
But that tension, that what you're talking about the composer always coming in and asking for the music to turn up, that we do that, but that comes.
There's a lot of work.
Well, no, but I feel that comes when when we're both, for whatever reasons, sometimes it's unavoidable, but we're kind of working in parallel without really knowing what the other person's doing. So I may be working to an offline that has no sound design, and there's all this space to be filled. So you may overcompensate with the music, and then it's only at the last minute that you realise that you've been doing the same, because you also didn't know what the track was doing. And so we both arrive at this place where there's just everything chucked at it, so somebody's got to give, clearly.
Do you ever turn it down after he's gone?
Always.
Let's not give away the secret.
I'll turn it up.
Okay, moving on.
Does your heart sink? Because I always used to sit there and then suddenly you get to certain situations where someone would go, oh, well, we've got to get the stems, which means you ask for the separate tracks so you can remix what a musician has done. And I always went, God, it must be really hard being when the phone called, they want the stems.
It depends who they're going to.
Oh, really?
It depends who the stems are being delivered to. but that's the best. The best results is exactly what you guys are talking about. Is this when you've got the stems of the music and you can work them and they become part of the piece.
It's usually like I often find, because we're collectively on a lot of calls together, and I think there's more conversation, there's more kind of preparation, and I think everyone knows what we're all trying to achieve, and I think that's really key to things, is, you know, directors and composers and sound designers kind of locking into that vision, like you say, Kim, like we used to do. You talk about stuff probably way earlier than people would think you need to, but actually that's the best way to approach
Collaboration
it.
is just such a massive part of it, and it's the joy of it, because you know, it's really you know, that as we discussed, you know, we have these little bits of film, and the pressure to make them amazing, and you know, everyone's trying so hard to do their bit, and it's the collaboration of it all that brings it all, and people just say things and everyone goes, oh, did you hear what blah blah said? And we all go, oh God, let's try that, you know.
Yeah.
And if there's time and you've got time to try things, it's always good to try.
Well, we'll come to that shortly. I'm just going to ask Louise a quick question, and then I think I've got my eye on the clock as well, so we'll shuffle through, make sure we get some of the cracking questions before we get shuffled off the stage.
The plug out on the clock.
So, Louise, when you first see a script, do you have a sense of whether it should be music-led or sound-led or a combination? And do you think that almost always evolves through the process?
I tend to find that a bit more in the edit, where there is something needs music at all, or is sound only, or whatever it is. But the script, I find that a really great stage to just get inspired by the story, which is it's a point where you've got this whole world of experimentation where you can come up with things you wouldn't come up with to the picture. Because once you've got the picture, you're kind of concerned with other things. You're concerned with going from A to B and making it work. So I find that script stage amazing at just coming up with ideas, textures, instrumentation, having those discussions, having those early conversations we were just talking about. Then if anything you do at script stage happens to work to the picture, then brilliant. But I find that whether then when you get the edit, whether it's music or sound or a mixture of the two, is ultimately between sound and music, we're just trying to create a tone and a vibe for the piece. So it could be a combination of the two, but the script stage is probably my favourite, actually.
It's quite common, I think, or commonly overlooked, that the soundscape, be it music or sound design or whatever, can very easily be saying something different to what the pictures are saying, but usually isn't. You know, it's usually one thought, but if you make that dichotomous, then you force the viewer to have an interpretation and a thought about something.
Right.
So so doing that at the script stage is kind of quite key, isn't it?
Then you get to influence the process as well, in a way, right? Like those conversations we were just talking about. You can play your music on set. People start listening to the music and almost picturing the final thing, and then the edit starts being crafted around it, and then it becomes undeniable. It just becomes part of the piece, and you haven't got those last minute conversations of what's the track. It just becomes part of it, and all the choices are informed around the music, and I find that a really brilliant way of working.
Okay, I think this, well, let's see. The technology, obviously, there have been such huge changes during the course of all of your careers, even the shorter ones. So, Johnny, how do you feel technology has changed sound design, or the audio mix over the years, and is it for the better or the worse?
I mean, I have a scar on my hand. In my first week as a 19-year-old working as a runner, I fell on an upturned razor blade that was from an editing block. And anyway, so I was there when analog went to digital, and it was an enormous, it created huge opportunity for the ability to try many different ideas much more quickly. In terms of sound effects, when I began in the industry, there was a wall in the studio with about 200 carts, like those old things that people used to put in their car. And those were the 200 sounds you had. And then from digital, you had hundreds of thousands. But I think ultimately it's about a good idea and a good recording. And I think a lot of people get blinded by the fact that technology is, seemingly ever abundant in offering you opportunities and fiddling around with sound and the way that, I'm not really specifically talking about music so much, but yeah, I think it's a misnomer. I think, commercials were great a long time ago as well, and, so were films. So, but it certainly primarily cuts down the amount of time required to iterate creative thought, I think, yeah.
There was something nice about having to commit to tape, though, back in the day.
Yeah.
Like make a decision, like that's what we're doing, and that's the bit of tape that's got it on. And because I also sort of started editing with tape, and when I tried to get a job in London, everyone had gone to Pro Tools, and I didn't get a job because I was like, well, I can do it faster on tape.
Yeah.
But it's that idea of it, you had limitations, and I quite like that, because there is wonderful choices with technology now, but sometimes it's a little bit like, oh my God, there's a little bit too much.
And also, technology is about to go through an enormous light speed of revolution, and we all as a community have to decide what we like about that and what we don't, and what we're going to find acceptable. So yeah, hot topic.
But I think with technology changing, it always comes down to, like across the board with what we do and what everyone in this room does, it's taste. That's what craft is about. That's why you will come and work with certain people, because you respect their taste, and their experience builds and delivers that taste to you. And it's that curation that I think helps make great things. And like way back when it was tape, you would hopefully make the right choice because of your instinct and your taste. And I think that should always win out over what's about to come.
Yeah. Yeah.
Boo, down with technology.
Down with technology.
Well, I don't think that's
Back
what
to
you're
tape.
saying. Kim, I've got a question for you. I think there's a lot of cautiousness in the industry because there's so much pressure and often so little time. One of the things you said when we were chatting earlier on, that your greatest fear was not creating something extraordinary. So I wonder how music specialists can help creators and clients to make brave decisions. Have you got any thoughts on that?
I always struggled a little bit with, especially your relationships with clients, when it came to, we've got to be brave and you've got to get the client to be brave and stuff like that. Because if you've done the story of the thing properly and everyone understands where you're trying to get to, and they understand things like we are in the business of getting people's attention, and you can articulate why you're doing things, and you're not sitting there going, look, I'm a genius, just let me do this and it'll be brilliant. If you're not doing that, and you're taking, and quite often, clients to me have said things and I've gone, oh, that's brilliant. On Honda, they were such an influence on us, because I remember the first bit of film we did for them, they watched it and they went, oh yeah, very nice, but that's not the sound of our VTEC engine. And we all went, oh dear, right. So then after that, we used to have to come to you, and you used to have to go down to the Honda Institute, and we had little sound libraries, but that led to that whole, this is our job, is to celebrate their love of engineering and to try and, we always said our job was no one wants to look under a car engine bonnet, right? But we used to go, well, all we've got to do is go, right, I'm going to show you the engine. There you are. That wasn't too bad, was it? So it was like we'd always get into the engineering, but it would be a really light touch, and we'd be very authentic with it. And I think because we were honest and we were having this conversation, that's why we ended up doing really different work.
It comes back to your collaboration point,
Yeah.
doesn't it?
Yeah.
So are you having? Is it about just getting everyone on board from before you get into the thick of it, and having a
I think
line of
so.
communication?
I think so, but I think it's also about being open enough to realise that anyone can say something, and you'll go, "Oh, hang on, what did you just say there?" And be open to those little things that people say when they're not really thinking, and you suddenly go, no, that's really important. We should be making a note of that and doing a lot of that. So, and that can come from any discipline, and quite often it can come, you could comment on something visually, and I go, oh, right, okay, yeah, Anthony's made a good point there. Just remember
Rare. But I think that's the beauty of the studio, like across the board for all of us, like composition, sound design, is having people in the room and those sort of conversations, and also finding the happy accidents. Like, you can play something and Kim would be there and like, oh, that was interesting. I was like, oh, that's not finished. Yeah, but that's good.
Yeah.
And like, oh, okay. And then you're kind of down this other path of creativity that's what technology, we're going back to that it's those little moments that you only get when you put people in a room. They're cultivated that way, and it's just conversations, it's playing little bits of stuff, it's kind of messing around with stuff. It's like, I loved the Beatles documentary when it came out, the Get Back thing, because it sort of encapsulated our process. It's like you'll sit in a room for 8 hours and you'll kind of maybe trudge away for a bit, and then all of a sudden this thing happens, and then all of a sudden the job has just like flown forward, and everyone's like, oh my God, it's amazing. Yeah. And, like Paul McCartney's written an amazing song, but it's well, not that good, but it's that idea that it's just people in a room being creative. And I think I'm sure across the board here, we always urge people to get into the studio and enjoy that process, and like go back to what I said before, like play with it all.
Yeah, I had that yesterday with
Paul McCartney,
with Jonathan Glazer, not with Paul, but with John Glazer. We were working on a spot for something, and he asked me to have a look at what the voice was doing, and I thought, what does he mean? And so I played it, and I played it at half speed because I wanted to hear the details of the clicks or something that I maybe wasn't hearing. And he said, yeah, that's great. Let's do that. And I was like, what? So, oh, do I tell him that was my idea and own it? No.
Yeah, always.
Yeah. So that's how it happened.
So Toby, this is sort of in the realm of technology, I suppose, but there've been many changes in viewing behaviour over the last. It sort of seems to accelerate mobile, social short form, and so on. How do those changes impact your job, what we do for music, sound design, if at all?
Yeah, they do. I suppose it's not a new development. I guess we've over the years you have to react to viewing habits and technology and the way people are engaging with the work. I guess there is something about immediacy of intention with music creation. I think that, whatever that might mean, a piece of music that can convey what it's trying to do quite easily and be digestible is, tends to do well in our world. And I don't think that's at the expense of, patience or any other kind of, quality that you might be looking for. It's just something that's quite vivid in terms of its intentionality. I think, I guess there are more and more variety in terms of the particular executions of a film, you can think about things like compositionally being quite modular in the way that a piece of music is put together, so it can easily be reconfigured as in a shorter duration or something. But honestly, I think all those things are second place to quality, and if the music's not good, then it's not going to go very far. But yeah, it's something that obviously we have to be aware of job by job.
Yeah. Anyone got any other thoughts on the way that shorter form has impacted their jobs?
I think you're right. I think as long as the story, you're telling the story in the right way, I try not to concern myself too much with the length.
Very good.
Spoken like a true composer.
Well, like, I don't know.
Well, the scary bit is if that's the thing that most people will see, isn't it, I suppose? If that becomes, but it isn't always, is it?
No, it isn't. I guess it depends what format you're working to. Right? We're talking about like those 6-second things. You know,
Not a big lover of that.
well, no,
No,
I
the
it's
haiku
just, that tends to come as, in all honesty, that tends to come in the work I do. It tends to come as a cut down. So I'll try to figure out what the sound is of a longer piece normally, and then you just try and make that as good as you can. But
Okay, Anthony, question for you. Is there something that you wish directors or creatives or even producers, I'm sure we've got a mix of that sitting in the audience, understood better about audio, either at the briefing stage or in the mix?
I think there'll often be people in briefs where, I'm sure you guys had it more from a music point of view, is that our brains are wired like musically in sound, as you probably kind of heard with how we're talking. But there's a lot of people who, like I said, don't be embarrassed to sort of try and sing it, or just kind of try and get out your head what it is, and don't be embarrassed about that, because that's what we're trying to do, is understand, you know, what is in your head and how can we convey that into what your vision is. I think I've been really lucky to work with lots of directors and creatives and producers who do understand the process, or like, you know, someone like Dougal Wilson who will map out the whole thing in a kind of a musical notation. And I'm not saying everyone has to do that, but I think all it needs to be is like early conversations with your sound and music people, and those conversations, like, we're here to kind of get people into our world. I think, you know, when you come into the studio, we want people to come in, and we've created this sonic world that you can just sit and play with and rip it apart, do what you want, turn things up and down. And, you know, that's the point, to get to the end where we go, oh, that's doing exactly what we want it to do, and telling the story, and the brand's great, and all of that sort of stuff. But I think it's just conversation. That's all you need to do. And don't be embarrassed. It's not, I think, when I started, it felt like certain aspects of sound and music were like this dark art that you weren't supposed to know about. But I think with technology, that's all changed. You can see it all on a screen. It makes so much sense. And like I say, come into the studio and just ask, you know, conversations. That's the key to it all, really. It comes back to collaboration. I think I always love when people come into a studio, and I think you may have been on a job and you're at that point where you've finally got the edit signed off. But when you come into sound studio, and we've done even something simple like just clean up the dialogue, everyone's like, oh my God, it's come alive again. And it's a beautiful part of the process, because it's like everything just comes alive. The picture comes alive.
You can be out in a minute.
Oh God, yeah, I'll stop so someone else can say. But yeah, that's the point of it. It's the finishing, and it's all about conversation, just getting involved early is
I'm
my
seeing
tip.
a lot of the similar words coming up throughout this collaboration, conversation. Luis, I'm going to ask you a question, which may be the last question. Let's see, so everyone jump in. This is really about protecting the space for audio and allowing it the time that it requires, a time to explore ideas, I suppose, between sound design and music. So I wonder if you have any thoughts about how we protect that space for sound, so that we can continue to make iconic audio mixes like some of the stuff you've seen before, and can we be optimistic for the future?
I think it's, from our perspective, probably about giving people a really great experience when they come and work with us, so that they can, if they didn't before, they can come out of one of these sessions that we do and go, wow, that has transformed, elevated the work, right? All of those pieces of work had a lot of time and thoughts and conversations around sound. No one went, well, we're at time. If there was exploration to be had, it happened, and that's how you get to those bits of work. There's a lot of young directors we've been working with who are very clued up and very interested in sound, which has been brilliant and really refreshing recently. Very young people who are like, love it, and they're talking about recording on set. They're really focusing on the mix and on the sound design and all that kind of stuff. So I think we can be very optimistic for the future.
And is that because you feel that the next generation of directors coming up are perhaps slightly more, because of viewing habits and just the way that people consume media now, are slightly more educated about audio?
Yeah, I don't,
Kim was obviously a trailblazer, someone who got it from the early days, but
maybe.
God, I'd like to think that, you know, you learn a lot from sound by hearing sound on different things. So you go to cinema and you, for the first time, you hear like, and you go, oh my God, hey, how do you know? And then you get a mobile phone and you start listening to music on a mobile phone, and it's like listening to, years ago, you know, tracks were mixed so they sounded great on little transistor radios or in cars or on a jukebox. And so sound has always adapted to how people are, and now I guess the younger generations are experiencing sound through so many different mediums, you know, headphones, like that, that I think it must give you a much richer understanding of how it can be, you know, what it sounds like when it comes through this, how much bigger it can sound if you do it like this, but can you make that sound work through this little thing? So.
okay, we're being told we've got to stop. Can we be optimistic for the future? Quick yes, no, everyone.
Yes.
Yes.
Absolutely, yeah. We're shaping it. So.
Yeah,
Yep.
absolutely.
Yep. We're starting a boy band.
That's right.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you. And I think there's a coffee break now.